Welcome to the Uncovered podcast. I'm Jared Kimber. He is Bayram Kazi. We are coming at you live on Jared Kimber's YouTube channel and also the Jared Kimber podcast YouTube channel. So if you want to keep following all these live chats, that's where we'll be from now on. By the end of the summer, we'll have moved across there when we've worked out how to move everything across. But thank you to everyone who has popped up. We're in the middle of the Ashes, Bayram. And I am currently in a place called Duddeston. Which is in Birmingham, which is not nice. It's not a nice part of Birmingham. But it's where Adam Collins has booked me in for the SEN commentary team. So it's where I am. It's funny, coming in, it was a very, very hyped Ashes, but not overhyped, as in, it was like, well, these might be the two best teams in the world. And, with India's form slipping a little bit, you'd have to say they're at least the two most informed teams coming in. Obviously, England changing everything, Australia coming in. Then the pitch on day one, I was a little bit like, well, in fact, I heard some whispers. I think that's the most polite way of putting it. That some of the England bowlers were even like, are you kidding me? We're supposed to bowl on this all summer? This is terrible. Please don't make pitches like this anymore. Despite the fact that Ben Stokes asked for things like this. Although I think they wanted to be a little bit quicker than this particular surface. But so far, it's been a really exciting game. Obviously, we're recording this before day 5. So anything, I'm assuming tie at the moment. But anything could happen. Plus, there's supposed to be a lot of rain. But it's been a cracker first test of an Ashes.
It's been absolutely scintillating. I've been hooked to my TV set for like 4 days. And that one day where it rained, I was actually like really, really down. Even though in a way it worked out because Father's Day was the same day and I got to spend some time with the old man. But still, I was like so devastated that why is there rain in this game? Because it's just so, mesmerizing to look at these two teams go at it. And it's interesting you brought the surface up because I think Stuart Broad was vocal about this, that he did not enjoy bowling on this surface. And he was like, I don't think I've ever seen a pitch as slow as this one in England, which is quite a strong claim. And especially when we had heard these murmurs that this is a made-to-order pitch, right? England asked for this, and Stokes even hinted at it prior to the Ashes that they want batting-friendly surfaces so that they can baseball their heart out. But
this isn't really a batting-friendly surface, though, either, is it? Because, we haven't had massive totals as well. It's kind of a no-one-friendly surface.
That's what I was coming to. On day one, you felt like it was a very batting-friendly surface. And then you can also, maybe in hindsight, question the declaration, because my initial thoughts were that you need at least 400 on this pitch. And there you are, 393 for 8, England, and Stokes declares, which is the most Stokes thing to do. Today, I was wondering if he would declare when they had a 250 lead. But anyway, that might come back to haunt them. I think Mark Butcher has made that very clear. He hasn't really minced his words. But then again, you look at the surface and we've seen both Moeen and Nathan Lyon get a fair bit of turn as well. There has been a little bit of inconsistent bounce and the ball is nipping around. It's more batting friendly than, let's say, other surfaces in England or, test match surfaces. But I don't think this is like an out-and-out Rawalpindi pitch, as some people have said that, right, in their articles and stuff like that. And I was like, really? Rawalpindi 500 in a day where the bowlers have absolutely nothing? And it's a draw from day one unless you're Ben Stokes and declare and win the test match. But anyway, I still think that, in my view, Stokes should have crossed that 400 run mark, because had they been defending, let's say, 350 or even 320, 310, 320, it would have been a different ball game. There's certain psychological pressure that comes with the 300 scored line. And I think England are capable of winning this test match. They need 7 wickets, need to defend 170 more runs. If they get Khwaja early on and maybe, let's say, Head, then they are most definitely in the driver's seat. But it's great how we're headed into day 5 with all 3 results possible, because there is a rain forecast for tomorrow, Jared.
All 4. You forgot the tie, which I've already said it's going to be a tie. There is rain forecast. Not as bad as we thought. I think originally we were told it would probably rain the majority of day 5. Doesn't quite look like that as well. The whole flat pitches, the whole flat pitch thing is like, how many wickets have we had? 31, because they were 8 down when they declared. So we've had 31 wickets already fall, and there was 2/3 of a day lost. Right? It's not that, and it's not like it's particularly easy to score. I think it's a bad pitch. Like, I don't think it's a good cricket wicket from that point of view. And the bowlers thing is quite interesting. The other thing I would say about that is that I think when Ben Stokes was saying, "Oh, we want to pitch like this, we want to pitch like this," what he was really saying is, we want to pitch that favors our batters, and they didn't want to go up against people who were, who were moving the ball around, but it negates their bowlers as well. So it's an interesting theory that they have come up with. But yeah, I think the Moeen Ali one is a really fascinating subplot. It was a fascinating subplot beforehand, right? And I don't think they were wrong to think it was their best option, but I also think that if that is the case, you cannot bowl him. I think he bowled unchanged from one end for like what felt like a day and a half, but probably wasn't that long. You can't get anyone to do that kind of job over and over again if they're not ready for it. And with fingers and the way that calluses open up and things that happen to spinners and have always happened to spinners. They're the people in our game that we are most aware of who wee on their own fingers because they want to harden the skin. And just a message to all the kids out there: weeing on your own fingers does not harden your own skin, so they're not even doing anything that works there. But the point, I suppose, the point is that they should have had that in their mind, and they should have just rotated him a little bit more. And maybe it doesn't matter anyway. But that show, you're now having a look at him trying to bowl out on the field. He could barely get the ball into his fingers. We've seen him trying to bowl with other grips. He was dropping his arm at one stage because he was trying to get revolutions on the ball in a different way. It's been kind of horrific to watch him bowl from that point of view. What else has taken your eye?
Well, just on the Moeen bit, I mean, I think he was rather unfortunate that he also got fined 25%. I mean, guy was just treating his finger, but I guess there is precedent for this with the whole Ravi Jadeja ointment thing. I think that the Duke's ball has a role to play.
I want to stop you for 1 second. I don't think he's probably treating his hand. But if his finger was already sore and he was struggling to get as much spin as he was before, there's also a possibility that he was putting stuff on his finger that would help him get more spin. And that's not saying, oh, Moeen cheated, because I think most spinners do it now. But the point would be, I really think it's important for us we can't allow spinners to just put anything on their hands and do that. But sorry, you're in the middle of a beautiful point and I ruined it for you.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I was just making the point that, look, Moeen still does have it. Like, he has that wicket-taking ability. We've seen that. And, I mean, England have missed a host of chances in that first innings when Australia batted, right? Bairstow, in particular, was the culprit. And I know all the Ben Fowkes fans will be out with their pitchforks. And I guess I also am on that same boat. But I think Bairstow, minus those two fumbles, hasn't been all too bad. But, yeah, you miss those opportunities, a missed stumping, and then a missed catch, and then Broad gets Quaj off a no ball. All of a sudden, you've added, 80 to 100 runs to Australia's total. Now you've got three bowlers, none of whom are enforcers, who, by the way, did act like enforcers at the end of that Australian innings. I mean, they did bounce them out, and even though they don't have a lot of clicks on them, they did do that job effectively. But it's just three seamers. Ben Stokes, who can barely have a ball, you can tell that he's visibly, in a lot of distress when he's, going at it. And, he did take Steve Smith's wicket, but you could tell that he wasn't looking at his most comfortable. And then you've got Moeen Ali and Joe Roots. And Moeen, who is your frontline spinner, has this callus. He can't generate that side spin anymore. We can see the results today on day 4 that he hasn't gotten the same sort of purchase that he had gotten in the first innings when Australia were batting. So that's a big worry. Now, that might not come into play at all because Stuart Broad is currently doing Stuart Broad things, and I wouldn't put it past him to single-handedly win this for England. But then again, on day 5, when you're expecting overcast conditions, with Robinson, Anderson, and Broad, you can't put it past them that they can defend this. But obviously, the Moeen thing is a big blow. I think it's the Duke's ball with the whole pronounced seam, enhanced its seam, which, he hasn't been, bowling with for a long time because he's primarily been bowling with a white ball, which doesn't have as pronounced a seam.
I'm sure the seam is a part of it. And I know that has been mentioned a lot. I think Graham Swan mentioned before the test, by the way, as well. The only thing I would add to that is that at a certain point, if you haven't bowled that much, put it this way, Kookaburra balls also rip open fingers when it comes to spinners, right? It's really the best story I ever heard was Bryce McGain, who of course was basically went from a club cricketer to a first class cricketer in the space of 1 year as an old man, and by the time he got to the Sheffield Shield final, his finger was just completely ripped open, right? And it doesn't happen as much to leg spinners, but it does happen to leg spinners as well. And so if you haven't been preparing or building up to it, and Moeen Ali hadn't been preparing or building up to it at all, right?
Mhm.
Bowling a couple of balls in the IPL nets is nothing compared to what we just saw. Plus, also,
Absolutely.
when you are bowling in T20 cricket or in the T20 nets, you're not trying to rip the ball as often. Right, whereas
Fair.
he was brought back and told to rip the ball, so and ended up ripping his finger. But
I
no,
mean,
I think
Saga was saying this on the comms as well. I mean, he was like, Murli used to go through this all the time, but ultimately his fingers just became strong. But that was Murli. He was bowling so many overs on, in Sri Lankan conditions, and his finger was battle hardened. Moeen's finger was not battle hardened, and I think this is on England for not having this sort of forethought. I'm not blaming them for bringing him back, but I don't think this is on Moeen because he is going to jump at the opportunity clearly, as we saw. I mean, it's a free ride for Moeen. He didn't want to play the Pakistan tests. He didn't play them. And now he has an opening for the Ashes and he, jumps with open arms. And I don't blame him for that. But yeah, using him the way they did, I think that was definitely one of the factors that's gone behind, of course, the callus. But next thing that I want to talk to you about, and I really want to talk to you about this, is that we spoke in an earlier podcast of how, England are definitely going to use the Bazball shuffle versus Scotty Boland. And that has been quite an enigma. Alex Carey has been peeping up to the stumps. We see Steve Smith functioning as backup wicketkeeper. Very, very fine first slip, which is a little back so that if there is a catching opportunity, he can catch it. Do you think England have done well versus Boland? I think they've done pretty well.
I think the one day when the ball was moving around and he bowled that spell, I think, was it Cummins? It must have been Cummins at the other end. So the start of the third innings, I think the Bazball shuffle was barely holding on, right? And that is a big difference. I think with Boland, if even a little bit of assistance, he gets some of those balls were just jagging around so much from him. I don't know how you play them, no matter unless you smother them. But even in that situation, he got Joe Root got outside the line, so I do think they've bothered him a little bit. But if he gets conditions where the ball moves around, I still think Scott Boland's going to be a handful. I think all you can really do at the moment is nullify his impact. I don't think you can stop his impact. But having said that, I thought he bowled a couple of good spells in this game. But this is, it's funny. I think England were going to come in with this attack regardless, right? I think they just thought this was their best attack. But I think if Australia had known the pitch was like this, they probably would have gone in with Stark just because of something different. It's not even Stark might have bowled worse than Boland or whatever the case may have been. But it's just having Hazelwood and Boland on this particular pitch is probably not as big an advantage for Australia because they have Cameron Green anyway, right? So I do think from that point of view. But yeah, no, you're right. I think they've used the crease well against him to put the pressure back on him. But if
Joe
the ball's
Root was
around,
reverse ramping him. I mean, he reverse ramped like Scotty Boland twice today, first for 6, then for 4. And I just love this renaissance of Joe Root, the test batter. You see him as captain. He's scoring tons of runs, even as captain, but he has the weight of all these expectations on his shoulders. Now he's, freed up, playing his shots. He's invented new shots. Of course, we've seen that with the reverse ramp. He's playing with a lot of freedom. And I think that he's really bought into this whole Bazball philosophy. And in particular, the Bazball shuffle, I think that his penetration points are way more forward when he, strikes the ball. And when that keeper was up, he was targeting that area behind the crease. And I think that is amazing to see because we all talk about how Joe Root is not a T20 player, but that is T20 cricket in a way.
Yeah. The other thing is playing the ramp with Alex Carey up the stumps. There was one of those ramps I thought that's not that far away from Alex Carey. Like it's actually legitimately dangerous. And we saw, Ireland had the same information. New Zealand had obviously already tried it with Tom Blundell. Ireland had the same information and they decided not to do it because they didn't think Lorcan Tucker could keep up to the stumps to medium paces, right? Alex Carey's doing it to a guy bowling 86, 87 miles an hour, right? Who jags the ball around. Like, fair play to the guy. Like, the wicket-keeping hasn't been particularly strong. I think you've been friendly to Bairstow before. Even though one of the catches he took, honestly,
that low catch.
The one where he, it looked like a bear paw catching it.
Marnus in the first innings.
Yeah, it might have been that one. Yeah, you might be right. I mean, I kind of expected Sky to put, a cymbal effect up when he took that, a big clang, because that just sounded bad. But yeah, so I really give Alex Carey a lot of credit from that perspective. But look, it's been a fantastic game so far. I still think Australia's slightly better team, but in these conditions, it's tricky. The one other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the tactics of Pat
Hmm.
Cummins, right?
The
Because I think
defensive field settings.
yes, I think he is a defensive captain. And I think
Hmm.
defensive captains usually get more flack than attacking captains, even when they're successful, just because it's a
Hmm.
bit more boring and it's not as sexy and all that sort of stuff. And I
Hmm.
also think that there are only two kinds of bowling captains I've ever seen in cricket: those who over attack or over defend. I've never seen a
Hmm.
bowling captain who's somewhere in the middle. They're usually one extreme or the other. But realistically, as someone who has covered the vast majority of the England Bazball tests so far, I would say that they probably came to it, Australia, with the best plans that I've seen. That in
Hmm.
and out stuff, taking away the reverse sweep, coming up with fielding positions that don't even usually
Hmm.
exist, and all
Yeah.
those sorts of things. I think there have been times when I think there were times today when Cummins just had like 6 or 7 guys back on the boundary and wasn't really trying anything. But that's because he
Hmm.
knew that England were going to keep swinging. And then it's
Right.
been up to England to try and not do that sort of stuff. But I don't think it's sexy captaincy, and I don't think it's how I would captain a cricket team. But from an effective point of view, I don't actually think it's been a terrible form of captaincy.
Yeah, the word that I would use for this is pragmatic because he knows that England will have a swing at it. And, he started with those fields. He had like quite a few people in the deep. It looked like an ODI field. And what that does is that it doesn't allow England to go at 6, 7 and over, but it allows them to go at a steady 4.5, 5. So that's
Yeah.
where I think it has a flaw in it, such that, you've got guys like Joe Root, and you've said this yourself that he is the best single taker in the world. You've allowed him to get like a century for free over there on a surface that was not doing much on day one. So I think in that regard, there might be some criticism that should come Pat Cummins' way, especially
Yep.
when you look at Ben Stokes and how he manufactured that Usman Khwaja dismissal. I've never seen that in my life. I know you called it the Yorkshire Wall, but I'm not acquainted with the Yorkshire Wall. So that was really fascinating to see all of those guys like right into Khwaja's V. He tried to sneak one past a point or something and got cleaned up or lost his off ball to Robinson. So I think Stokes has been more proactive, and I personally
Mm.
enjoy his captaincy more. But Cummins has been pragmatic, and we talk about England's missed opportunities. You cannot forget Australia's either. There were 3 drop chances in that first innings. So the fielding has been
Yeah.
atrocious by both teams. Wicket keeping has
Yeah.
been good by Carey, and even the runs he's scoring, I'm attributing all of this stuff to the Karachi pool. Anyone who's watching this and doesn't know, Alex Carey tripped into the Movenpick Karachi pool, and ever since he's been scoring tons of runs. And now Bharat actually tweeted he has become the only wicketkeeper to stump both Steven Smith and Virat Kohli, who have only been out stumped once in Test cricket. So there's a fun fact for all of you guys. So yeah, I think the fielding has also cost Australia, and had they perhaps restricted England to a lesser score, they could be chasing something less. These are all things in hindsight, of course, and Australia weren't in really good fielding form anyway. You
Mm.
take Cam Green and Steve Smith out of the equation, and they've been pretty bad, right? They had tons of missed opportunities in the India Test as well, in the World Test Championship final. And I think that game would have been dead and buried had Australia, hung on to those chances, even if they were half chances at times. You expect the Australians to take those chances in international cricket. But anyway, I think we probably want to move on with things. Just on last, note, I want to talk to you about Usman Khwaja. Here's a guy
Yep.
who even I wasn't expecting would do well in England, given his record over there and the way he got out to Shami in the first test. And I thought he would get a lot of that. But they didn't really bowl right arm pace to him from over the wicket. So that I think was one flaw. And then you've got to give credit to Khwaja. Even if it's like a fraction short, or even if it's like a length ball, this guy has
Mm.
pulled everything. He has pulled everything, mistimed them for 4, timed them for 4, you know, picked out the gap between mid on and mid wicket, which is really hard to do when you're playing the pull shot, right? It's kind of awkward. But I've been mighty impressed by Khwaja because he hasn't really looked back ever since he's come back. He's got tons in Australia. Of course, we remember those twin Ashes tons in Sydney and that celebration. And he's got a better one now. He's got another Ashes 100 and just threw his bat in Edgbaston. And I know a lot of people have some issues with that as well. But I think it was just a heat of the moment thing. And I think Khwaja is pretty honest about it too. But runs in India, that's another big one, especially
Mhm.
after the failures in Sri Lanka early on in his career. Runs in Pakistan, we're going to discredit because I think maybe even you could have gotten a ton in that series.
It's
But yeah,
possible.
it's quite the story, and I don't think we've ever seen anything like it because here's a guy who's in his late 30s, definitely the wrong
Mm.
side of 30, is probably playing his last Ashes series and is going out on possibly the biggest high that we've ever seen. He averages the most amongst openers in a minimum of 25 innings in the history of the game, 68 point something. And I think that is phenomenal. And
Hmm.
I'm really lost for words. It's probably my favorite comeback story in recent years.
Yeah, the only major thing I would add, other than I think it's great that I mean, I think anyone who's ever followed his career knows he has these highs. I think the ability to string it together for as long as he has and as many different places as he has, I think is fantastic. And I love watching him bat. So if he's making runs, that's always a good thing. The only thing I would add though is that this is a pitch that really suits him. I don't think on a normal England pitch you could play the pull shots he's played, right? But you are right. I do think England. I think they went with their strength of bowling around the wicket. And I think they did it to Carey and they did it to Head. And all of those guys happen to be the weird anomalies in world cricket when it comes to left-handers. But regardless of that, he's batted well in both innings so far. So let's take a break here, mate. If you want to, it'll be a shorter one tonight because we've got to record another show. And I've been working since very early this morning. But if you do have a super chat like Raghav has, which we'll get to in a little bit because that's going to fit into a question, into a topic that we'll get to later. But if you do have a question, feel free to put one there. But you're listening to Uncovered with Jared and Bayram, and we'll have a break and we'll come back to you very, very soon. A few years ago, I had a panic attack after ESPN Cricinfo made me their global writer. I'd earned that position, but I also felt like a fraud at the time because I didn't really understand how I wrote. I understand that there was a process and gears and different styles and things, but how it all came together felt a little bit random. And so I began to panic like a golfer with a natural swing, worried one day I'd just end up with the yips. And would my career be over? So I took my writing apart piece by piece until I understood it. And then I figured out I could teach others all the mistakes I had learned. So I started an online course where I tried to make it as cheap as possible so people like me would be able to afford it. It's called Fans with Laptops, and heaps of people from around the world have used it so far, from first-time writers all the way through to professionals trying to improve. I started with a simple plan to make each writer the best they could be. And from the feedback I've received over the years, it seems like the course does that. But after COVID, my career changed. I came to YouTube, started podcasts, wrote emails, and formed a new career on my own going forward. So I now had something else to offer, the multimedia side of things, social media and everything else. Not to mention that I was building everything up as an independent. And so I added all of that to my course. So if you have ever wanted to work in sports as a writer or podcaster or making videos or anything else, Fans with Laptops is the place to start. If you think you qualify as a fan and you have a laptop and you want to work in sport, click on the link. Uncovered podcast available on the Red Ink feed. Or if you're listening to a normal podcast, it's currently on the Jared Kimber Good Areas channel and also the Jared Kimber podcast YouTube channel. And if you like Bayram's hair that he can't stop playing with, or my hat, or you want to listen to more and more podcasts, or you want to see what kind of corporate art I have in the background over here in my Airbnb, or you want to work out what kind of Chelsea clock Bayram has, remember to subscribe to that new channel, the Jared Kimber podcast channel on YouTube. And obviously we will any chats or comments and everything else and super chats and all those things we will be picking up over there as well. And eventually that's where all the podcasts will be recorded, but we're not quite there yet. But you'll also, footmarks, which we've been recording, will also start to appear there. I think actually the first episode might be up. I might have sent that to Bayram today. I think that's right. I have no idea. Ashes is great. We're about to find out what's going to happen tomorrow. So we'll work out more about their first test there. World Cup qualifiers. Actually, let's get to the super chat that we got from, where is he? Raghav says, does Heinrich Milan not seem to have figured out his best Island 11 for ODIs a year into the role? While he improved their T20 side, from debuting Ben White today to making McBride open, I don't get his thought process at all. So for those who don't know, Ireland lost to Oman today. We were following it in the press box. In fact, I was on air when it happened. And I showed it to Dan Norcross while he was commentating so he could say it. And he's looking at, and he said on air, why are you showing me this game? It's of no interest. I said, look who's winning. And as I said that, I think Oman actually hit the winning run. So huge for Oman. I think they're a quality team. They're probably missing a couple of players when it comes to, having a regular opportunity to beat the better teams. But I think this is the first time they've beaten a test playing nation in a major game. I think I'm right with that. So huge for them. Oh, so I should say the first time they've beaten a test playing nation in an ODI.
Bangladesh. They defeated Bangladesh, I believe, in the T20 World Cup qualifiers, if I'm not wrong.
You're right. Yeah. So first time in an ODI. But again, a big stepping stone for them. The Ireland thing, I mean, what Rykover said here is really interesting. So obviously, Andy McBride open, we kind of knew he was going to be somewhere up the order going in. There'd been some words about that going in. I'm not as worried about Ben White, although it's very interesting that you would World Cup qualifier and you pick someone on debut. It doesn't seem like the ideal situation for that. But the bigger thing is that Curtis Camphor didn't play, and because and Harry Tector bowled, it just feels like their team was not put together particularly. I don't know if you've got George Dockrell and you've got Andy McBride, and you should have Curtis Camphor. You've got 3 bowling options in your top 7 batters. And even in their case, they should have had 2 bowling options in their top 7 batters. And they're still having to bowl Harry Tector. It seems like Ireland got something very wrong today.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was really shocked, and I think on one of these Uncovered podcasts, I mentioned how I was, rooting for Ireland to actually make it to the World Cup because I think they've done a lot of things right in the last few years, and they've actually, taken games very deep versus top nations. We've seen that time and again, and I was expecting them to really take these qualifiers by storm, but they've suffered a massive upset right at the start. And Oman is a good team. They've got all these expat players from India and Pakistan. I think one of their frontline bowlers is a former under-19 Pakistan cricketer. I think Fayaz Butt is his name. Guys, go check it out. Maybe I'm wrong, so let me know if I am. But anyway, I'm happy that Oman made it, and they have, shown us some signs in the last couple of years that they do have what it takes to win these games. But you'd really back Ireland to win this. And what I don't understand is that we've been listening to Andy Balbirnie say that these qualifiers are at the top of their priority list, and they've been planning for these qualifiers in particular. And this is where it's all at. This is, what they're focusing on 100%. Going by those statements, that team today looked very, very half-baked, undercooked, and not playing Curtis Camphor, who is, worth his weight in gold dust, really, because he is that one of those 3-dimensional players. And he's done it versus top nations as well. He's shown you his talent. How do you not play him? You've got to find room for him,
And he's from Southern Africa, right? Like, I know it's slightly different. It's slightly different from where he grew up, but he would understand the conditions better than some of the other players. But I thought it was absolutely fascinating. I know they did well in the T20 World Cup. They don't qualify for the World Cup, and they've struggled, of course, of recent time in Test cricket. I do think Andy Balbirnie and Richard Holdsworth will, and perhaps Heinrich Milan as well, although he's newer in the job. But I do wonder if it is time for a restructure of Irish cricket, or even if I'm wrong and it's not time, someone else will think it's time. And things might change. Richard Holdsworth's been there a very, very long time. They kept going on, as you said, about how this was the most important thing to them. And they've come out and they've lost to Oman. Now, they might bounce back. They might be very good for the rest of the tournament. You're talking about an ODI team that beat the West Indies in the West Indies, that drew a series with South Africa, played really well in the World T20. We do know they put a lot of emphasis on T20 cricket after not being very good at T20 cricket. Unfortunately for them, that was after they were really good at one-day cricket. So you do wonder if they have the ability to improve at all things at all time with that, that sort of limited talent pool that they have. What else happened? There was 100 in the USA by the guy that used to play for the Guyana Amazon Warriors, but West Indies won that game fairly easy. I think they won that one by about 40 runs. Nepal lost to Zimbabwe, was it?
And Nepal was actually going really, really well versus Zimbabwe. In like 42 overs, they had like 240 runs, and they even had lots of wickets in hand. And their captain at the crease, and they were really donking it. Like, I was following that game because it was right before, day 3 of the Ashes started. And I was like, oh, here we go. Nepal is going to beat the home team. But then again, I think Zimbabwe are really blessed when it comes to this generation, because sure, we all love Heath Streak and Henry Olonga and all of those guys. But if you really come to think of it, when you look at the skill sets, Blessing Muzarabani and Richard Engarava, that partnership might just be the best pace bowling partnership Zimbabwe have ever had. And I think that might really help them. They're in their home conditions. Their batters are in form. Craig Irvine, Sean Williams are experienced players. Sikandar Raza Butt is one of the most informed players in the world. He's also getting lots of franchise gigs. He's played in India. Just was there, playing the IPL. So they've got a lot of good stuff going for them. And Nepal, they were close to, upsetting them. But, once they were rolled over for 290, whereas they should have scored somewhere around 320, it was fairly obvious that they are going to lose. And same with the West Indies. At one point they were 180 something for 5 or 6, and they even lost 2 early wickets. But then their players, Johnson Charles, Nicholas Pooran, and who else? Jason Holder, and I'm forgetting one more player, but they all got 50s. They kind of
Shai Hope, I think, did he get one as well?
Yeah, Shai Hope got a
Yeah.
50 at a very good strike rate, like just a smidge under 100. So there's some good news for West Indies, especially because he was batting in the middle order. So that's interesting stuff, definitely, when you're looking at them. But they were always going to beat the USA, even if they got like 280, even though USA came close, but you'd back the West Indies to win that game. Other than that, Sri Lanka, business as usual, steamrolled UAE, got 350 odd, and then, rolled them over for 160 or 170, something like that. They won by 175 runs, which is absolutely colossal. So I think fairly obvious results barring the Ireland one. I'm really keen to see how this tournament progresses, because clearly the teams that we're not thinking have it in them are showing us signs that they could pull off an upset here or there. So definitely, keep an eye out for the qualifiers, because things might get interesting over here.
Yeah, and we'll come back next week. Obviously, it's in the middle of the Ashes test, this one. So with split focus, especially from me, I was following the scores as closely as I can, but I can't really watch it as much as I would like. But I'm sure over the next week, we'll see a lot more. We'll take another quick break. And then after the break, we will be back with a little bit on the Asian Cup and Bangladesh versus Afghanistan in that test match. Let me tell you a story. When I was a kid, people would ask my dad if he wanted me to be Viv Richards. And he always said no, he wanted me to be Boycott, because apparently he liked boring things. But anyway, it turned out I could be neither. But thanks to Bodyline t-shirts, I can wear clothes showing both players. The Boycott Stick of Rhubarb is one of my favorite t-shirts. I really like the design. And it's not the only one I love. There's also a WG Grace one where he's in a pedalo, which is a part of my everyday wardrobe now. But there are heaps of other cool shirts on this site, and you can search for them by nations or type, and they seem to add to them all the time. I'm a big fan of the Court Marsh Bold Lily in the Australian collection, and there's also a lovely Morning Everyone in honour of Richie Benaud's great greeting. The English area has the Fast Leg Theory shirt, which I think is a ripper. There's a couple of great West Indian ones I love, including this simple Viv Richards design, and a couple of Capel Dev t-shirts in the Indian section that I simply must have. I'm not saying that Bodyline t-shirts will have something that you will like, but I will say this: they got me to wear a Jeffrey Boycott inspired t-shirt. And that in itself is a minor miracle. Welcome back to Uncovered. Thank you to everyone. I see that the chat is going out. We got Path in here, EKG, Andrew, Delina, Steve. There's lots of people in. So remember to come in. More comments, more likes, everything that you put in, the better. Thanks to Alex and Raghav, obviously, who did his super chat before. Asia Cup. I have no idea. You put this in the notes, and I whatever's happened with the Asia Cup, I haven't even followed in the last couple of days because I've just been out of it.
So before I even get to the Asia Cup, here's the breaking news. Pakistan's chairman, or PCB's managing committee chairperson, whatever, Najm Sethi, is not going to be carrying on. So we're going to have a new chairman at the PCB in a year which has both the Asia Cup and the World Cup. Mere months away, this has happened, and that is as Pakistan cricket as things can get.
Just after he's come up with the weirdest the coaching structure we've ever seen. He's like, anyway, everyone, let's see how that goes. I'll be on the golf course if you need me.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a political thing, because in the current, government, there are two leading parties, and one of them was favoring Najm Sethi. The other one is favoring Zaka Ashraf, who has also been PCB chairman in the past. So it's all musical chairs at this point. But what I'm really keen to see is whether or not that coaching structure, goes on as planned, because Sethi was at the forefront of that. He was the one who kind of orchestrated everything, and good on Mickey Arthur for not leaving the Derbyshire job. I think that was a very, very smart move in hindsight or retrospect. But anyway, the Asia Cup, where it stands is that it's going to be a hybrid model. We don't have the dates as of yet. And what my understanding of the hybrid model was, Jared, was that Pakistan would get to play their games in Pakistan unless they face India and unless they make the final. Weirdly enough, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that Pakistan gets the first 4 games, not all Pakistan games, and then 9 games in Sri Lanka. And I don't think that's a win for the PCB. Now, you could argue that any sort of bargaining with the BCCI is a win because they are the superpower. But I think that it's really idiotic if you just get to play Nepal and Pakistan and then you go to Sri Lanka. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know what sort of point you're trying to prove, because you've already proven the fact that you can host international teams in Pakistan. So that's not what the goal was over here. The goal was to kind of set some sort of precedent for the Champions Trophy and at least have Pakistan's games in Pakistan, and then we can see what happens, so on and so forth. But they treated it like some sort of victory, and having just the first 4 games in Pakistan, and Pakistan's not even set to feature in all of them, I don't think that's a win. Either way, the Asia Cup is happening, and that is good news. We're all excited, and it'll be good practice for all teams going into a World Cup, which will also be in Asian conditions. But yeah, who knows what's going to happen to Pakistan cricket next? Like Zaka Ashraf will come in. Maybe he has some different ideas, different plans. Who knows what's going to happen to the domestic structure? We were going back to department cricket. Are we going to go to department cricket now? Is that what's going to happen? Everything's up in the air. And the primary and sole reason for this is that the Pakistan Prime Minister is the patron of chief of the PCB. If that wasn't the case, then these radical shifts won't happen all the time. And this is currently a battle between two politicians, the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and former Prime Minister Asif Ali Zardari, and they've got their own men. So that's what's happening, and it's sad. And the worst part is that this is the most stable ODI team Pakistan has had since '99 going into an ODI World Cup. And now you've got all of this instability around it. And yeah, I guess the only positive is that we do get to play the Asia Cup. There's that respite at the end of it.
And just lastly, obviously, Bangladesh absolutely smashed the face-off of Afghanistan. My man, Najmal Shanto, twin hundreds. What did they win by? I'm just trying to get the number. 546 runs.
Yes.
Yeah, quite handy there. Ebadot Hussain took 4 in the first innings as well. And I'm trying to remember who took the wickets in the second innings. Was it Taskin? Yeah, it was Taskin Ahmed. Took 4 in the second innings. Look, a bit like Ireland, Afghanistan don't play a lot of test matches. But also, I think it's good for Bangladesh of recent times that they've been, playing Ireland and Afghanistan, and also showing that they're a fairly good team, right?
I mean, at home, Bangladesh is a very, very good team, right? We've seen them defeat Australia, I guess, in one test way back in the day when Australia toured. I think they had some favorable results versus England too. I can't quite recall. But basically...
Yeah, 1-1 against England, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. But they've had very favorable results at home as a team, regardless of the format. And over here, of course, we expected them to win. Of course, 546 runs is like absolutely... you could say they've massacred Afghanistan, but then I wouldn't blame Afghanistan too much because A, they don't get to play a lot of test cricket, and B, this was a team without Rashid Khan and without Mohammad Nabi. And you can understand that because they've got a very busy schedule coming up with the Asia Cup, with the World Cup and all of that. So you want those guys fit and firing. So I get why they were like, okay, you're playing in Bangladesh, you're probably going to lose. Go with, a younger squad. And they have had one positive at least. Their seamer, what was his name? Najat Masood. He's a right-arm seamer making his debut, got a fifer in the first inning. So that's one positive.
Yeah, he did.
But that just might be the only positive that Afghanistan have in the game. Because you've got to give credit to Bangladesh as well. I know that they have received a lot of flack for producing certain kinds of wickets to favor their results. But let's not forget that 20 of the wickets that Bangladesh took in this test match, 13 of them came via seamers. And that is new.
Yeah.
That has not happened before. Ibadat, who I love when you call him Ebadot because that's how he spells his name, and whenever I read it out loud in my head, I'm always calling him Ebadot.
How do you pronounce it? I thought it was Ebadot. I thought that's how it's supposed to be pronounced.
I call him Ebadot in my head as well, but no, it's Ibadat Hussain.
Ibadat, I like that. That's better. Because Ebadot does sound like a little bit like it's a game that you buy for kids, and then the kids don't like playing it.
And Ibadat means worship, so that's an interesting contrast. But
look, I think Bangladeshi seamers are coming through nicely. I think there's him and Taskin have gone together. So no. I think it's very important. And Shanto, I'm all about the Shanto. Thank you very much.
We were discussing that, right? We were discussing how Shanto has been really, really mediocre, and ever since he's just been scoring runs like anything. Twin hundreds in this game. That's not easy on any surface. He's got 146 and 124. Star, absolute star.
I think he's the most improved all-format batter in the world. And I suppose it's not even that he's improved in all formats. It's just that he couldn't make a run before, and now he's found form. But absolutely fantastic for him.
He's rubbed off on Mominal, who scored his first ton in like 2 years. And this was supposed to be Bangladesh's best ever test bat, right? So good things happening in the Bangladesh camp, but let's just hope that they stick around for some time, because we've seen this whole movie play out in the past. And then when a big tournament comes, Bangladesh flop like anything. I don't want that. I want Bangladesh cricket to improve. So here's to hoping that this can be that sort of Kickstarter for them.
Definitely. Thank you for listening to Uncovered. Remember, you can listen to it all over YouTube, apparently. It's also on Twitter, or you can just listen to it in the Red Inca feed. Huge thanks to everyone for their comments and their likes and their subscribing and all that sort of stuff. Please do it more. You can find Bayram as Def Mango on Twitter.
What we are making here, and you want to know if you can...
I pressed that button too early.
Yeah.
You can find me everywhere as well. But huge thanks, and we'll be I'll be back in a couple of days for Wagon Wheel, and also Footmarks will be up in a couple of days as well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. If you like what we are making here and you want to know if you can help out, well, you can. On top of asking super chats on our lives, you can also support us through Patreon or buy me a coffee. The more support we can get, the better and more videos we can make. On Patreon, there are plenty of other things we offer too, like a Discord server, the chance to ask questions directly, AMAs, and early versions of our recordings. This channel only exists because people like you help support it. We have to buy equipment, software, pay wages, and my mortgage, I suppose, just to make this stuff happen. And if you don't have any money available to spend, it isn't just your money we want. Shares, likes, retweets, comments, subscriptions, the little bell icon thing, all of it. They help us build and become more professional, make more videos, better videos, all that sort of stuff. So thank you for watching everything we make and for all your support so far.